The Bone Church. 1. I want to make one thing clear. I did not kill my friend. I previously told the detectives that I had no idea what happened to Charley, that he just disappeared that night in the woods. But that was a lie. I do know the truth, but it is so terrifying and awful that I knew no one would believe me. I was also scared that they would lock me up in a mental institution. So, I kept the truth a secret. This seemed only to worsen the theories over the years, to give those armchair detectives more clout to muddy my name. Well, I'm writing this to put an end to it, to put to bed those nasty rumors. Charley did not fake his own death that night, and I certainly did not kill and bury him out there, as so many of you claim. Whether you believe me or not is your own right, but I can no longer keep this secret. I have to unburden the horror from my mind and to find some peace. Maybe then I can sleep again. 2. We were in Charley's old pickup truck, rumbling along the dusty back roads on yet another one of our daring adventures. Charley was at the wheel while I sat in the passenger seat with the map spread out before me. Charley had highlighted the winding trail we were about to embark on. It did not seem to end. Not going to be easy, this, I muttered, tracing the path with my finger. That's the point, mate, Charley said, chugging a can of energy drink. It's all part of the adventure. The bumpy terrain caused our rucksacks to fly all over the back seat. How many nights camping do you reckon? I asked. At most, 5. It should take us a week to cover the whole trail, Charley replied. Damn, I muttered. He flashed a confident grin at me. It'll be amazing, mate. Just like old times. Trust me. As the car jolted, Charley drummed his hands on the steering wheel, nodding along to the music playing in his head. His excitement was palpable, but I couldn't shake off a sense of unease. Something told me we should turn back, but Charley was determined to push on. He had meticulously planned this trip for so long. There was no talking him out of it. How were we to know what we were heading for? 3. As we finally reached our destination, Charley skillfully maneuvered the car off-road, concealing it among the surrounding foliage and branches. It was his way of rebelling against those bullshit parking fees. Despite the captivating beauty of the landscape, an unshakable sense of unease gnawed at me, urging me to reconsider our plans. While Charley relieved himself behind a tree, I meticulously adjusted and secured my rucksack, ensuring every strap was properly fastened. A voice caught me off guard. A rugged-looking man, later revealed to be a local landowner and farmer, leaned over the wall behind me. His sudden appearance startled me. You heading up the mountain? He asked. Yes, I replied. Did you not hear the news? He asked, his heavy Scottish accent making it hard to understand. Excuse me? I said. Pointing at the sky with his walking stick, the man warned, there's a storm coming. Nasty one, from what I've heard. Not the best weather to be wild camping. I assume that's what you two are up to. I can see the tent rolled up under your bag. We're trying to get back to nature, I explained. Glancing at the cloudy sky, I added, we'll be okay. That might be so, but if you go wandering in places you don't belong before he could finish, Charley interrupted, saying, all right, mate. The old man clearly did not like the look of Charley. He whispered something under his breath and returned to his business, muttering what sounded like bloody and Americans. Nice chap, Charley said, raising his eyebrows at me. I watched after the old man, puzzled by his unfinished sentence. If you go wandering in places you don't belong, what did he mean by that? Already, my man, Charley said, peering up at the mountains. Up we go. 4. The rain fell relentlessly, the heavy drops battering us as we stood in the midst of the mountains, ready to traverse them. Charley, however, warned that it would be too perilous to continue and suggested we turn back. I agreed. We were miles from civilization, after all, far away from help if one of us fell or got hurt. And it was getting dark, so we opted for a shortcut through the dense forest instead. The moment I set foot into the woods, an eerie feeling washed over me, and I got the shivers. But it wasn't from the cold. We were somewhere ancient and evil, somewhere we shouldn't have been. But Charley didn't seem to sense it, or if he did, he showed no signs of caring. As the seasoned outdoorsman, Charley effortlessly started a fire. "Get over here and warm up," he called out to me. The heat from the flames was a welcome relief. After changing into dry clothes inside our tents, we sat by the crackling fire, cooked some burgers, and cracked open a couple of beers, which helped ease my tension. "Well, change of plans," Charley remarked, studying the map. "Doesn't matter. If we cut through the woods here, we'll get back on track." "How big is this forest?" I inquired, glancing up at the eerie branches and the shadows that swelled there. Charley shook his head. "I estimate it's about 10 miles long." "Great," I muttered. Charley folded the map and reclined, a contented expression on his face. "This is the life, eh, lad?" he said. I nodded in agreement. He then playfully nudged me in the belly. "Hey, cheer up. Just remember where you were a few hours ago." I had to admit, he was right. I hadn't seen Charley for quite some time before he unexpectedly showed up at my doorstep. He had heard about my struggles with mental health and my diagnosis of schizophrenia. Upon witnessing the disarray in my apartment and the commotion from the neighboring flat, he instinctively retrieved my old rucksack. He declared that he was going to help me get better. No more seclusion, no more sleeping restlessly on the sofa, no more navigating through heaps of trash and clutter. We were embarking on an adventure into the wilderness, reminiscent of our earlier escapades. Just him and me. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "I truly appreciate it, mate." He nodded. "I love you, brother," he declared, giving me a hearty pat on the back. 5. The sound of the wind, mercilessly battering my tent, violently snapped me out of sleep. Letting out a low groan, I reached for my watch and squinted at the time. It read 2 in the morning. A sudden urge to relieve myself jolted me fully awake. Grumbling at the inconvenience, I realized that the bottle I had been using was full. Typical. I resignedly pulled on my raincoat and boots before venturing out with a flashlight. The rain had subsided somewhat, but the relentless howling wind still assaulted everything in its path. In the distance, I could hear Charley snoring in his tent. That guy could sleep through just about anything. Finding a suitable spot, I relieved myself against a nearby tree. As I zipped up, a sudden snap of a branch made me swing the flashlight in its direction, revealing something that caused my heart to race. "Charley!" I yelled urgently. "Charley!" He poked his head out of the tent. "What's wrong, mate?" he said groggily. "There's someone out there." "What are you talking about?" "I saw someone," I stammered, my voice shaky. Moments later, Charley emerged from the tent with his flashlight, shining it where I had indicated. "I don't see anything." "It was a man," I insisted. "In a cloak." Jesus, he had to be 7 feet tall. Charley grabbed me by the shoulders. "Did you take your meds last night?" "It's not that." "Did you?" "You know I can't drink when I take them." He sighed and nodded. "You're just hallucinating, brother. Go back to your tent. Sleep." "But come on. Go. I'll keep watch for a bit if you want. I'm up now anyway. I might as well rebuild the fire." I felt guilty then, as if I were ruining his trip. Returning to my tent, I lay there with my eyes wide open. I was certain of what I had seen, and I knew without a doubt that it was no hallucination. 6. Upon waking up, I noticed that the rain and wind had finally ceased. Expecting to be greeted by the soothing sounds of birdsong, I was instead met with Charley's agitated voice. "Where's the map?" he growled. "Mate, if you're just messing around, give it back." "What are you on about?" I said, unzipping the tent and clambering out. "I didn't take the map." Charley rubbed his face firmly with both hands, growled, and then shook his head. "It's fine," he sighed. "I remember the way. It was due north. I've got a compass. Once we're out of the woods, I can pretty much remember the trail." I suspected he didn't, but I didn't want to provoke him any further. We searched for the map, but it was gone. Someone or something had swiped it from his bag. Then my mind raced back to what I saw in the dark, the tall man in the cloak. Maybe it was. "Don't, Andy," Charley said sharply. "Don't. I told you, you were hallucinating." His voice carried an undertone of anger. Acknowledging the tension, I said no more. I packed the tents, while Charley prepared breakfast, egg, sausage, and bacon sandwiches. We ate as we walked. The ground was squelchy and muddy, and an ominous mist slithered through the woods as Charley followed his compass. The further we ventured into the woods, the taller and thicker the trees became, intensifying the foreboding feeling that we were headed towards something ominous. 7. We continued walking without a break until the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting the forest in long shadows. My exhaustion was growing, and the monotony of the endless trees was starting to wear on me. Despite the burning pain in my legs, I pressed on, not wanting to dampen Charley's spirits any further. This trip had been nothing short of a disaster from the very beginning. Charley, usually so full of cheer, now wore the same glum expression that I couldn't seem to shake off. Then it happened. Charley, lost in his hurry to cover ground, didn't watch his step and stumbled, careening down an embankment and badly twisting his leg. Swearing in pain, he struggled to get up, and I hurried to his side to assist. Charley winced as he tried to put weight on his injured foot. "Badly sprained," he grunted through clenched teeth, his voice echoing through the eerily silent forest. At that moment, I realized that there were no animals around us, no birds singing, no squirrels scurrying, no stags grazing. The absence of life sent shivers down my spine. And then I heard whispering in the mist. I fumbled through my bag for an antipsychotic and a benzodiazepine. Charley snatched the benzodiazepine pack and swallowed one with a grimace before using a branch as a makeshift crutch. "I think we should rest here and camp another night," he declared, trying to sound more assured than he looked. Despite my rising fear, I suggested we leave the forest, but Charley staunchly insisted on staying one more night to nurse his injured leg. As darkness fell, we sat by the crackling fire in ominous silence. The whispering mist persisted, and I couldn't shake the feeling of unseen eyes following our every move. We must have been at the heart of the 10-mile wood now, and I couldn't deny the growing sense of danger. After a tense meal of stew, I retreated to my tent, leaving Charley to nurse his leg by the fire. "There's nothing out there," I whispered, desperately trying to convince myself we were safe. I couldn't have been more wrong. 8. I woke up to the unexpected sound of a church bell echoing through the forest. At first, I could have sworn it was just a fragment of a dream. But then, the resounding chime reverberated once more, and this time it was even louder. It was at that moment when Charley unzipped my tent. He has a big, stupid grin on his face. "Do you hear that?" he asked after the third chime. I nodded, still trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. "I can feel it," I said. "It's like the vibrations are pulsating through the ground." Let's go check it out, Charley suggested. Are you serious? I replied. Why not, Andy? He frowned. I hesitated for a moment, surveying the distance. It was hard to see through that heavy darkness and that eerie mist. But a church like that, in the middle of the woods, it's just so out of place. Are you really not a bit freaked out by that? Aren't you a little curious, mate? Charley responded. I suppose I was, but I was also afraid. And what about your leg? I reminded him, concern tinging my voice. He shrugged. It'll be fine, he reassured me. I can limp. He stared at me, sighed. Fine, you stay here. I'll go see it on my own. Reluctantly, I got dressed and hurried to catch up with him, the uncertainty still lingering within me. Charley, wait for me, I hissed. As we ventured closer to the church, the sound of the bell grew louder, the reverberations almost tangible. It was so deafening that the trees themselves seemed to quiver, as if bowing to the insistent tolling of the ancient bell. It wasn't the usual metallic ding heard in villages, but rather a grating, heavy, stony sound. I carefully counted each chime, right up to the point we reached the source. There were 13 of them. 9. What the hell is that? Charley said. He had stopped to lean against a tree and was shining his flashlight up at the church. When my eyes finally fell on it, I realized that it was the source of my unease the entire time, this thing, hidden here, in the belly of the woods. It was the reason there were no animals here, too. They sensed the darkness, just as I had. It was unlike any church I had ever seen. Rather than typical stone and slate, it seemed to have been constructed from skulls, human skulls, grinning at us in the darkness, their eye sockets illuminating eerily when our torches crossed over them. Pillars and arches, upon closer inspection, were crafted from femurs, pelvises, and spines. Despite the growing unease flooding through me, a strange curiosity began to take hold. When I attempted to reach out and touch one of the skulls, Charley abruptly grabbed my arm. Don't, he said. You are right. We should go back. I could hear the apprehension in his voice, but I was under some kind of dark spell. Church beckoned me to explore, and I found myself hesitating, torn between fear and an inexplicable fascination. Andy, I mean it. Let's go. I did not listen. Circling the church, I raised my torch to illuminate the stained glass windows. I was met with scenes of unspeakable horror and violence, each panel depicting acts of depravity and murder. A screaming man was being castrated in one window as cloaked figures watched on. A woman was being disemboweled in another, her entrails consumed by the same cloaked figures. A human heart was being held up to a grinning skull in a third. What the... I heard the bell then, miles above me. It scraped against one of the walls that housed it and made the earth beneath my feet tremble. Stepping back, I shone the torch up higher. I was stunned to discover that it wasn't a bell at all, but a colossal human skull. The skull, big as a truck, swayed eerily in the wind. Inside its mouth, a chain was attached to a rusty metal ball. Andy, we need to go now, Charley shouted. I don't like this. I really don't like this. You go, I said. But I need to see inside. Are you crazy? You were too scared to get out of your tent a minute ago. You are not acting right. Get back here. Ignoring him, I began to ascend the steps. I couldn't help but notice that they were crafted from human teeth. The door to the church towered over me. It was made of bone as well. I turned the handle, made from a sawn-off femur, and the door groaned open. Andy, don't go in there, Charley whispered from behind me. Andy, I'm serious. Shit, he followed behind, limping. I entered cautiously, trying to hold my breath. Much like the outside, the interior reminded me of the catacombs in France, with grinning skulls scattered all around on the floor, walls, and pillars. The grand chandelier at the center was crafted from arm bones holding candles. As I moved further inside, I noticed pews made of white human skin, some of which had tattoos. The books on those pews were also bound in human skin, but they were black. Charley was having a panic attack, and although I should have gone back to help him, I couldn't resist the urge to continue exploring. As I went on, I realized no crucifixes were on the walls, confirming my suspicion that this was an ungodly place. A place of pure evil. I might have vomited right there when I saw what was up on that pulpit. Some sick bastard had formed a lectern from the mummified body of a wailing man. His arms were stretched out, and a giant book was sprawled open on his back. I couldn't read what was written in it because it made no sense. I saw some dark, evil symbols and some kind of ancient language, but nothing decipherable. The appearance of the writing made me feel uneasy. It seemed to be written in blood. Despite feeling sick and terrified, I could not stop examining the unsettling text. The pages seemed to be fluttering in a non-existent breeze. "Andy," Charley retched. "Andy, come on." I snapped myself out of my daze and stepped away. On my way back down the steps, I saw the pulpit was framed with long red curtains draped on either side. Only I thought they were curtains. When I got closer look, when I saw the wet sheen, I saw it was plaited muscle. Charley vomited behind one of the pews. I would have left then had it not been for the beating. I had to know what it was. After slapping more life into that dying torch, I raised the beam up over the pulpit. There was that beating again. Bump, 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 bump. I felt a stab of horror run through me. There was a heart up there, a giant human heart, maybe a heart made up of 1,000 little hearts. It was beating and writhing, pulsing and thumping. It was shooting blood through enormous blue veins strewn across the ceiling. The blood fed the skulls in the walls and dripped out of their mouths into fonts. It was then I realized. This place, this bone church, was alive, impossibly alive. Charley grabbed me by the scruff and yanked me back. "We're leaving. Right now." We made for the door to run, but something made us both stop. Something made us scurry to the back of the shadowy room and hide behind one of the pews. Someone was coming. 10. A mysterious figure cloaked in a black robe strode into the church. His hood was drawn up and shiny from the rain. He marched over to the pulpit and flipped through the book. He filled me with unease. It was clear that he was not entirely human, because he stood well over 7 feet tall. Memories of the figure I'd spotted in the woods came flooding back. It must have been him, the one who had stolen our map. Suddenly, an eerie chant filled the air. More followers were approaching. "It's too late to run," Charley whispered. "Just stay down." The congregation, all clad in black robes and strangely tall, filed into the church, their haunting hum reminiscent of demonic monks. They took their places in the pews, 5 of them sitting right in front of us. I urgently covered my mouth, silently praying for us not to be discovered. After a while, I peered out and watched as the tallest figure, possibly the demon priest, descend the pulpit. He picked up a chalice formed from the skull of an infant. Then, with a swift motion, he scooped some blood from one of the fountains and passed it around the congregation. They eagerly drank from the vile vessel. I had to swiftly retreat into the shadows as the figure approached our pew. The sound of the congregation slurping on blood forced me to stifle a gag. The demon priest returned to the pulpit and began speaking in a cryptic, otherworldly language. His deep, resonant voice vibrated through me. He appeared to be reading from that mysterious tome. Amidst the unintelligible words, The only phrase I could recognize was sacrifice. Suddenly, one of the tall men stood up and raised his hand. The demon priest applauded eerily and gestured for him to step forward. However, the church emitted eerie creaks, and the colossal heart within the structure pulsated with increasing intensity. Then, a haunting whispering emanated from the skulls, murmuring words that should not have existed. Amidst the unsettling aura, the demon priest clapped and raised his hands again. Then, in chilling clarity, he spoke in English. "The Bone Church has spoken. It seems we have some visitors." At that moment, Charley panicked. 11. They heard us. I heaved up Charley and pulled him towards the door, but we were stopped. 2 of them were in the doorway, towering over us. It seems we will not require a sacrifice after all. Not when 2 human hosts have willingly joined our congregation. It is a miracle, a gift from the gods. But, alas, we require only 1. Charley formed fists. He was ready to fight, if he had to. The menacing figure of the demon priest drew nearer, his steps echoing softly in the eerie silence. He leaned in, straining to hear the faint whispers emanating from the skulls along the walls. He laughed menacingly and said, "The Bone Church has chosen you." He pointed at Charley. "You are the chosen sacrifice. Your blood will sustain it, and your heart will beat as one with its own." "No," I cried out in desperation. "Leave him alone." The demon priest clapped twice, and the congregation swarmed. They took the blows from Charley's fists without concern and dragged him down the aisle. "Run, Andy," Charley yelled. The congregation hummed again. They surrounded Charley on the pulpit. They started tearing at his clothes, stripping him naked. "Go!" Charley screamed at me again. "Andy, go." The demon priest brought over a dagger. He raised it up. "Run!" Charley screamed. The dagger was thrust into his chest, and he wailed in agony. I fell back in shock. The knife glinted as it was thrown and out, up and down. Charley gagged on his own blood. I made my escape. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breath came in ragged gasps as I fled because I was a coward. I ran, knowing deep down that it was too late, but unable to shake the gnawing feeling that I could have done something, anything, to save Charley. The weight of regret bears down on me daily as I struggle to accept that I might have been able to save his life. As I put some distance between myself and the church, my foot caught on an unseen root, sending me tumbling to the ground. The sickening crunch of impact reverberated through the air as my head collided with an unyielding tree. The world spun, then faded into pitch darkness, swallowing me whole. 12. I woke to the sensation of someone gently tapping my face. Startled, I instinctively scrambled backwards, expecting to encounter menacing figures in dark robes. However, instead of demon-like apparitions, I was greeted by the sight of a woman and a man clad in hiking attire. Daylight streamed through the trees, casting a warm glow, and the sun illuminated the forest around us. The woman, speaking with a distinct Scottish accent, inquired about my well-being and offered assistance. My dry mouth made it difficult to speak, but she reassured me and promptly provided me with water from her bag, which I eagerly drank. She then asked if I had been outside all night, to which I gasped a response about the church and Charley. The woman exchanged a concerned glance with her husband, who promptly made a call for help after finding a signal on his mobile phone. I was soon rescued from the forest, airlifted to safety. I couldn't help but peer down at the trees below, hoping to catch a glimpse of the church, but there was no trace of it. 13. It turned out that I had suffered a concussion and a severe skull fracture. The good Samaritans who found me likely saved my life. The search for Charley continued, and the discovery of our car the following day only fueled speculations about his disappearance and my involvement. People began to suspect that I was keeping something from them, and the rumors and accusations only heightened my distress. I was unable to speak, unable to tell anyone what had truly happened. How could I? They would not believe me. When Charley's wife confronted me, accusing me of killing him, I remained silent, unable to defend myself. She slapped me. Hard. Maybe I deserved it for leaving Charley back there to die. 14. I revisited the area a few years later, after all the media attention had died down. As I approached, I saw the farmer herding sheep in his field. I caught his eye, and he made his way over to me, showing signs of an old injury. "I had a feeling you'd come back," he remarked. "You know about it, don't you?" I asked. "The church, you mean?" he nodded. "I used to wander up there when I was young. Took my girlfriend there once. The church claimed her, just like it did your friend. I tried to warn you and that Charley. I saw him on the news. We need to go and find that place and burn it down," I exclaimed. He laughed a wicked laugh. "You don't understand, lad. You can't find the Bone Church. The Bone Church finds you. Do you think I never went back for my girlfriend? I searched those woods for weeks. There was nothing there. It comes and goes, you see. I reckon there's a hole in time in those woods, some sort of doorway into another dimension. The church only appears when it needs more hearts." I made to walk on but stopped. "You still hear it, don't you? The chimes." The old man nodded. "Every night. You too, I'm guessing. Even in my dreams. I keep trying to warn people," the old man continued, squinting at the sun. "But they think I'm mad, or don't want to know. There will be more disappearances, I can promise you that. And there's not a thing that we can do to stop it. You can go back up there, but you won't find that church. Not unless it wants to find you. My advice? Get on with your life. Your friend is gone, just like my Katie." I turned my back on him and marched up the hill. He was right, of course. 15. So now you know. I want to make it clear that I am not a killer, nor am I insane. I am finally coming forward with the truth. If my story serves no other purpose, let it be a warning to those considering exploring the ominous woods in the Highlands. Do not go there, because if that church or those things in robes need another heart to feed the Bone Church, they won't hesitate to take yours. Andy Johnson, 2021.